Our guest in this segment is Emily Hanna. She's with the American Heart Association, West Virginia Government Relations Director. Emily, good morning. Thank you for joining us again.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Also, May is National Stroke Awareness Month.
Yes.
So I would be remiss if I did not mention that everyone should know the acronym we use, FAST, for warning signs of stroke: face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time to call 911. So great to be here with you this morning.
Yeah, go through those again, Emily, a little slower.
Yes, okay. So we use the acronym FAST as warning signs of a stroke. So the F is for face drooping, especially if one side is drooping or numb. And then we have arm weakness, one arm weak or numb. Ask the person to raise both arms, see if there's a difference in one or the other. Speech difficulty, are they slurring? And if they are having any of those symptoms, best practice is say time to call 911 because every minute counts.
And does it matter if it's one arm or the other in regards to stroke?
We typically see just one arm, but it could be either side.
Okay. Very good. And if there's anything else you wanted to communicate about that, please take a moment and do so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just, other stroke symptoms can be confusion, trouble seeing, or trouble walking. So prevention is key. If anyone is having or experiencing these symptoms or you see them in a loved one, get them to their primary care provider. Get some preventative screenings done so that we can really reduce the impact that stroke has in our country.
Emily, is time critical with stroke as what it is, say, a heart attack?
Absolutely. Time is of the essence. Every second, every minute that goes by without care increases the long-term effects of stroke.
So if someone feels they're having a stroke, since I did not realize the same level of urgency as a heart attack, there'd be a tendency to hop in a car and drive to the emergency room. But the best thing is call 911 and have someone in the ambulance given whatever care is needed at that time, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Don't get in your car. Call 911, or if you're in a rural area and response times are difficult, call a friend. Because 911, the paramedics can begin measures that will address the stroke, and we certainly don't want anyone having a car accident or having further medical conditions while driving. So 911, that paramedic response is absolutely the best option.
Yeah, and you don't have to be elderly or older to have a stroke either. It can happen to relatively young people.
Absolutely. There can be genetic conditions, lifestyle choices, lots of factors that can contribute to it. So we don't want to make that assumption that just because someone is younger, they're not at risk.
Appreciate you bringing that up, Emily, and May is Stroke Awareness Month, so let's make sure we all stay diligent about that. And let's also talk about the state of West Virginia and tobacco cessation funds, which heading into this legislative session, you were hoping to get some money to get into some cessation programs here in West Virginia. How did we do, Emily?
So that did not end up being one of the priorities emerging at the forefront of this legislative session. But what I want to bring awareness to out of that is that what we're really dealing with in West Virginia is the cuts from the federal government. And so we have some opportunities here in West Virginia with dual settlement funds, with Rainy Day B, with Tobacco Master Settlement to look forward and work collaboratively. This session wasn't it for us, but we're also trying to figure out what's going on and what the future is without those federal funding out of the CDC's Office of Smoking and Health, which was eliminated on April 1st. So we kind of had to figure out what was going on before we could see how the state could best respond and appropriate funding.
So with that department eliminated, what's the practical effect on the work that you do?
So for Heart Association, we work more on the research and policy side. We are not directly funded, but some of our partner organizations are. You all might have seen that RAISE lost their federal funding, which is the youth tobacco prevention programming that's here in West Virginia with the Lung Association. So that was a hit to that. And then let's see, just generally trying to figure out what the Department of Health will do as far as tobacco prevention and cessation without those federal funds that were so heavily relied on.
And does West Virginia still rate poorly in regards to percentage of the citizenship that smokes?
Yes, unfortunately, we have some of the highest rates of both adult and youth smoking and vaping.
Let's talk
in
about
the nation.
Let's talk about vaping for a moment, because years ago, not that many, that was seen as a lower risk alternative to smoking. Misguided belief?
Yes, misguided. Our research is showing that the long-term effects of vaping are still emerging. And further, we don't know what all is in those vape products, and we are seeing what people refer to as popcorn lung, and the effects of that are irreversible. And we are seeing young people dying from that. Which, our current governor, when he was the Attorney General, he worked on the Juul settlement funds because of the practices of the vaping industry, specifically Juul, targeting youth and the unknown health effects. So yes, I know at first it was marketed as this fix or a taper down method, but what we're really seeing is a lot of unknown health effects that we won't know for years.
What is popcorn lung?
That is where the inside of the lungs are so damaged that they look like a popcorn on the interior of the lung.
I see. And it's from unknown ingredients in what they're vaping, or is there something specific that's causing it?
It's a condition that damages your lung's smallest airways. It's the technical name, I will mispronounce this, is bronchiolitis obliterans.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's when chemicals are inhaled into those smallest airways.
I see.
So vaping is one cause of it.
In talking to teachers, it appears this is a very difficult thing to control in the high schools and maybe the middle schools too. Emily, are you hearing the same thing?
Yes, absolutely. It is very difficult due to the marketing practices of the vaping industry. A lot of these vape products are hard to decipher or hard to recognize. They look like candy. They look like pencils. They look like rulers. And so youth that don't understand the long-term health effects are able to sneak these in to their homes, to their schools, and we just really have a lack of education about the dangers of it, and it's hard to monitor, it's hard to discipline.
Bill?
Yeah, good morning, Emily. You mentioned much earlier about the tobacco settlement and how you hope to use the tobacco settlement to promote some of your causes. Does that extend to the opioid settlement, West Virginia First Foundation? Are you working with them at all?
We have not worked with them yet. Sometimes tobacco prevention does fall into those other settlement funds. I just don't know what their priorities are from those opioid settlement funds. I'm not up to date on that. But I think it is a possibility because a lot of time, all of substance use prevention, we can incorporate tobacco and vaping into that. We certainly partnered with other organizations historically on that substance use prevention.
So your funding sources that you've relied upon, you mentioned the federal government, which there's real challenges in this day and time for the federal government. State government is to probably to some degree as well. What's the long-term prediction, long-term projection for your program and the funding that you need?
So long-term projection is, I think right now, we are hopeful that with the different funding sources West Virginia has, whether that's the Juul settlement funding, whether it's using money from Rainy Day B, that we just have to work collaboratively with this new administration who has identified health priorities. You know, we saw some bills come out looking at improving the health of West Virginians, and we're certainly grateful to the governor for his support on our priority bills outside of tobacco this year. So I think we have to sit down as folks in the tobacco prevention and cessation world, look at these different funding streams and say, how are we best going to use this to improve our tobacco rates moving forward. And I think we're at a key point to do that with this administration, working together with the new Secretary of Health, working with Governor Morrissey, working with the Attorney General, because we certainly have options. We just have to figure out how to work collaboratively and make sure we're all on the same page. Was
an effect starting over with the change of administration in West Virginia?
Yes, largely impacted, by the federal cuts, but also by the new funding streams coming in, the old funding streams that hadn't been appropriated. And so I see it as a fresh start.
Has any of that initial tobacco settlement money been used for tobacco cessation programs in West Virginia, Emily?
So the Tobacco Master Settlement was signed back in 1998, which is certainly before my time in this work. And it's my understanding that it was largely used for things like PEIA and establishing Rainy Day B. I know in recent years we certainly have not used it for tobacco prevention or cessation. There have been efforts legislatively to appropriate some of that last year and this year, but they didn't gain traction. And I think a lot of that is just with the fiscal uncertainty of, will we be in a surplus? Will we be in a deficit? Not historically, but that's not to say we can't.
What amount of money would you feel would be appropriate to help you administer the programs around the state that you would like to ideally administer?
Great question. So in working with the Governor's Task Force and the Coalition for Tobacco-Free West Virginia, we are one partner in those entities with a lot of other great folks, whether it be state departments or other national organizations. And we had presented a plan asking to appropriate roughly $4.5 million per year to address key priority areas. Prevention, like looking at vaping prevention, tobacco prevention, the Catch My Breath program, which is it would also put funding towards the Quit Line, and it would put funding towards further cessation programming, and then just some awareness and education campaigns. So that was our initial ask. The CDC used to suggest somewhere in the $24 million. We said, hey, that would be really hard to administer at first. We don't want to jump in and waste money and make mistakes. So let's start slow. Let's let's implement this around $4.5 million, see if we can get some really good data on the effectiveness of programs using those evidence-based programs and start there.
See, Bill, just 1 second here. We came through Jim Justice's era where for a couple of years in a row we had billion-plus dollar surpluses. And even this year we're exceeding expectations to the point where Delegate Chuck Hurst a moment ago on the program or in the first segment was projecting a surplus of $350, maybe $400 million for this year. This seems like such a small amount of money out of that. Why is it such a struggle to get such a small budget number installed here in West Virginia to help the state's health?
That's a great question as well. And I think that, as we've moved since 1998, we've moved through different priorities of different administrations, and perhaps it just hasn't emerged as a top priority, not for lack of trying from advocates and folks on the ground doing the work, but Governor Morrissey did respond to some of the stuff last week saying that he would consider this for special session. He's certainly given out health priorities, asking to improve the health and lives of West Virginians. So while I can't answer comprehensively why it hasn't been a priority, I think the timing is right for it. He's well aware from his work with dual settlement about the impacts of youth vaping. So I'm just really optimistic that this is a starting ground for it, regardless of what's happened in the past.
Are tobacco cessation programs successful? Is there evidence from other states' usage that they do work?
Absolutely. Yes. Dual therapy cessation, where folks take medication and then also receive therapy, whether that's individualized or group, have been shown to really reduce the rates of current smokers or vapors. The Catch My Breath program that is gaining traction in West Virginia it was piloted. It showed success in that. It has evidence-based practices in it. And then an unpopular opinion, but increased tobacco taxes have been shown to be incredibly effective at reducing tobacco use rates.
Bill?
Yeah. How would the $4.5 million be used, Emily?
Oh, so those were those items I lined out before on the 4 key points. So it would fund prevention, like the Catch My Breath program, or other evidence-based practices. It would address cessation, like through our quit line or our dual therapy treatments. That's the medication or the patches, nicotine replacement on a taper down scale with behavioral health therapies. It would be some education and marketing campaigns to make sure West Virginians know about what's available. And then it would also do some administrative costs to collect data and make sure we are appropriately spending the money and can further show evidence that these things are working.
Yeah, my question, I did not ask the question very well. No, you answered correctly. My question was poor. Would you target schools or would you target existing organizations? What would be your vehicle for your public relations?
The target audience, you're saying?
The target audience. Yeah, the target audience, I think, are young folks. At least that's what she said earlier. But how would you access these folks?
Yes, well, we do have the programming in the schools, so I think using that existing program, we have the Catch My Breath, and so that's already in middle schools, and so we'd like to see that expand to target that audience further, those key ages of the middle school ages. And then we also, the Heart Association, we are self-funded, so we wouldn't, but we are in the schools right now working on development issues and talking about, just overall cardiovascular health. So we have that demographic in front of us, and we would definitely want to seize that. And then also existing smokers, which the ranges range. It's never too late to quit smoking. As soon as folks quit smoking, there are a lot of health factors improve. So I think it would be dual focused of both our youth for prevention and then existing smokers so that we can improve their health outcomes.
Since 1998, where you got the tobacco settlement, what has been the trend? Has the trend in young folks, have they reduced the number of people smoking? The adults, what's the trend?
So nationally, there's been a reduction in youth smoking and tobacco rates. West Virginia has still remained at the top for tobacco and nicotine use.
You surprised by that, Bill?
No, I don't think I am surprised. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. And a related question is, we've been working on this for about 25, 26 years. How do you crack the nut? Are you doing something? Do you need to do something different than what you've done in the last 25 years?
They need to get funded.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fair question. I think what we can do is look at states who use those tobacco master settlement funds to attack tobacco and nicotine rates and see what they did best and see how they reduced their numbers. I would say it's my understanding it's not just one approach, it's many. It's really getting their quit lines up and running. It's getting into the schools and getting effective evidence-based programming in there. It is making sure the public is aware of health concerns. It's changing the culture to a healthier society. It's not one thing, but other states have done it well, and so we do have models that we can follow with appropriate funding.
The funding's not coming for, you say you're not getting the funding from the legislators that you would like to have. Is it because they do not fully appreciate the problem, or they have competing priorities, or do you have any sense? Because Rob said earlier, $4.5 million is not a lot of money when it comes to the state budget. Why have you not been getting more support from the legislators?
Well, I know one issue is historically there was not a lot of good data coming out to present to the legislature to show that what we were doing was effective. That's before my time. And so in 2020, the legislature said, let's look at this. And they developed the governor's task force for tobacco prevention and cessation. And since 2020, we've pulled together health experts, national experts, and we've been looking at what we were doing wrong historically, what other states were doing, what best practices are, and we've been presenting that to the legislature annually to show them some options. And I think competing priorities is a fair response to perhaps why that hasn't gained more traction yet.
Emily Hanna, our guest here on the program. Emily, there's other reasons for heart disease too, of course, diet, exercise, and such.
Exercise.
Do you host programs for that as well, and are those relatively well-funded?
So the Heart Association has a wide variety of research programs and health priorities. For example, this year we worked with the Commissioner of Agriculture and our friends at Food and Farm to get an appropriation in there so that folks who use their SNAP benefits at local farmers markets get a 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3 match. What that does is it helps local farmers, the local economy. It puts that money directly back there, but it also gets them fresh local fruit and produce. So we were super excited about that. Another priority that the American Heart Association has is looking at cardiac arrests in schools. When Damar Hamlin had his cardiac arrest, on national TV, we saw the NFL respond so appropriately and save his life. So for the past 2 years, I've worked at the legislature with my team to pass 2 bills to get cardiac emergency response plans in schools. And we were so pleased that both Governor Jim Justice and Governor Morrisey signed those bills. And so what that means is kids who are doing athletics, kids are in PE class, visitors to schools will be protected just like we practice a fire drill. We want to make sure if a cardiac arrest happens in schools, we know what to do, whether that's using an AED, using CPR, getting on 911 as quickly as possible. So yes, we work across a wide variety of policy areas to improve the health of all West Virginians and all Americans nationally.
Just about a minute and a half left here, Emily. If you could, in honor of Stroke Awareness Month, go through your acronym once again fast.
Yes, FAST. So F, if there's face drooping, does one side of the face droop or is it numb? Ask the person to smile, see if it's uneven. Arm weakness. Ask them to raise their hands above their head. Is one different than the other? Speech difficulty, that's the S. Is it slurred? If so, T, time to call 911. Every minute counts.
And act quickly. The speed is the success point here. Got to get to it
exactly.
quickly. And how do we find out more about the American Heart Association and the work that you're doing there?
So you can go to www.heart.org. We can also have our You're the Cure advocates on there. You can put your information in, and you can learn all about the American Heart Association, what we're doing nationally and locally.
Emily, thank you very much. As always, much appreciated.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.